Hi, it's Lucinda Curran here from Eco Health Solutions, and I have the privilege of introducing you to Elizabeth O'Brien from the Lead Group. Now, Elizabeth is the instigator of the International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week of Action. Hi, Elizabeth, how are you?
Hi, Lucinda. I'm fantastic. Lovely to be with you.
Thank you for coming. Now, we are at the point of the year where it is the International Lead Poisoning Week of Action. What is this year's theme and how does it come about and what does it all mean?
Well, the World Health Organization and the United Nations set this week up in the 2013 as the final Sunday to Saturday week in October each year. And so the theme, generally speaking, has been to get every country in the world to set regulations which limit the amount of lead in paint to 90 parts per million. So Australia currently has 1,000 parts per million as its upper level. And I am told by the Australian Paint Manufacturers Federation that most manufacturers in the Federation would actually already be complying with the 90 parts per million upper limit, but we just have to get it into regulation so that even imported paint, for instance, would have to comply. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, just to help people understand, because I think you're such a humble person and you do such amazing work and you have for so long, and you've got all these accolades and nobody would really know about all of this. How does this come about that you instigated this week?
Well, yes, I was the winner of the award for outstanding contribution to the environment in 2004 by the United Nations Association of Australia. And I was already involved with the United Nations Partnership for Cleaner Fuels and Vehicles, and we have together eradicated leaded petrol from all but 3 countries in the world. And so we're still working on that, unfortunately, but the Week of Action was my idea since about 1997, when I asked the then Health Minister in New South Wales to gazette a Lead Poisoning Awareness Day, and that was done for the 20th of October, which marked the 100-year anniversary of the first publication of information about of a journal article about lead poisoning of children. That's the first in the world. Lead poisoning of children were dealt with on a case-by-case basis in the journal article. So that's the history of it. It all pivots around the 20th of October, and the World Health Organization finally got on board in 2013 after we'd been running this Lead Poisoning Awareness Day and week for all those years before that. So now in the world, the great news is that nearly 100 or more activities are held during Lead Poisoning Week of Action, Prevention Week of Action in the world, and there's been at least activities in 100 countries, and the theme has been fairly consistently getting 90 parts per million limit of lead in paint for each country one by one, and they've achieved that due to the Week of Action and the advocacy of individual and NGOs and governments inside each country. So, you know, eventually we will have this wonderful low level of lead permitted in paint. That level, by the way, is a level that means you can't add lead to paint. You have to have some sort of maximum because there's naturally occurring lead in the ingredients of paint. So it means no lead additives. Yeah. So that's the target for the UN and WHO. And the Lead Group's target, my target, is actually total elimination of lead poisoning by 2041. So hopefully the Lead Group will achieve that, because then I'll be 85 and ready to retire.
Good point. Now, we're talking a lot about lead poisoning and lead prevention. lead poisoning prevention. But just for people who've really got no idea about lead and what it does to us, why is this so important?
Yes, it is one of the most predominant contaminants of the industrial era. The testing that is done in the world, whether you're testing water, paint, air, soil, dust, cavity dust inside buildings, sediments, it doesn't matter. Wherever you test, the most common contaminant will be lead. And this is because it was used, it is found in coal, naturally occurring in coal. When you burn coal and have an industrial revolution, you are already spreading lead. When you add it to petrol, fantastic way to disseminate it into everybody's lungs. And there isn't a person on the planet with no lead in them as a result. There isn't an organism on the planet with no lead in them as a result of lead in petrol. When you add it to paint, to make beautiful colours and to make it adhere better and to dry quicker, and to be a good anti-corrosive, fantastic material, lead, it does everything. You then get lead poisoning for every person who's involved in home renovations, in painting on, automotive paint, marine paint. Workers are affected. Do-it-yourself renovators are affected. Children are affected because people renovate and dry sand around them, and that's going to be leaded paint. If it's pre-1997 in Australia, that will be leaded paint. So the ways to get leaded are through every environmental medium. Drinking water is leaded these days most commonly by new taps, because taps are leaded brass typically, unless you go out of your way to buy stainless steel taps. And you can get lead in the pumps that people use for their water tanks. You can get it in the tanks, on the roof, the flashing. So there's many ways to get leaded, and everyone alive today is leaded. It then is a question of how much. And the problem with being leaded is that as a child and a worker, say, or a renovator, or any hobbyist who gets leaded, it goes into the bloodstream, but the blood takes it around to every organ, lays it down in the bones. You end up growing with these leaded bones, and as you age, or you get pregnant first of all, or you lactate, or you have a menopause if you're a woman, but as you age, generally your bones demineralize. And in that demineralization, that's when the lead comes back into the bloodstream, all going through the brain, the heart, the liver, and the kidneys, affecting every major organ, providing so much brain aging. It's not funny. Dementia, Alzheimer's is potentially going to be found, through research, to be caused also by lead. The major impact, however, is through hypertension, heart attack, stroke, early death. So that's what the lead poisoning prevention is all about, is not only those primary prevention, stopping lead in paint, stopping lead in new petrol, but secondary prevention, stopping the lead that's already in the soil, the dust, the water, from getting into people, and tertiary lead poisoning prevention, stopping the lead that's already in people from actually killing them. So hopefully finding ways to get lead out of the bones and out of the body without causing the harm that it typically does as we age.
Yeah. Now, a lot of what you were speaking about with when the lead leaches back out of the bones and is released into the body again, all those diseases that you mentioned, I guess, would be typically seen as diseases of aging.
Absolutely. And there are more. I didn't even mention cataracts, seen very much as a typical issue with aging. Hearing loss, very much about aging, right? We think of it as aging, but caused by lead, can be caused by lead. The trouble with lead is everything that it does cause can be caused by something else. And so doctors, it's not the go-to thing. If someone comes in with hypertension, they don't measure your blood lead level. They don't even think to do it. So, there has to be more blood lead testing. of people who have balance problems. That's another issue that lead causes. And even, I mentioned cataracts and hearing and memory problems. There I was having a memory problem moment, trying to think that it is memory. And, just being, and heading towards dementia. So all of those issues are lead related, and therefore everyone who has those issues, as well as, kidney problems, should definitely be being tested for their blood lead level over time, and to keep an eye out for the research. Every doctor should be keeping an eye out for the research that hopefully is trying to discover how can we get lead out of our bones, out of our body, without it harming us on the way out.
Yeah.
And this, I think the answer is through food. Maybe it's through medications. Maybe it's through sauna. Maybe it's through exercise, sweating, showering, because we know that it comes out through the sweat, and we know that you can, lose it in so many ways. You can urinate it out. You can, poo it out, but you really want to be getting rid of as much lead as you can as you age, so that you can have a healthy and smart aging. Nobody wants to be having dementia as they're dying. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you were talking about blood lead levels. So there's different ways to test lead, like there is with all sorts of things, but the blood lead levels is what you look at. And there's also a level which, if it's above 1 microgram per deciliter, then it's a level for action to mitigate lead exposure. So
yes, but not only to mitigate lead exposure, but to also, it's very important, you've got to identify current incoming lead and eradicate it. That's, absolutely, that's 101 for lead poisoning prevention. But the second part of it is, how can you reduce a blood lead level just by trying to get lead out of the body? So that's a critical part. And I spoke in Melbourne at the ACEs talk on lead testing, and mentioned a wonderful case study that's on the Lead Group's newsletter, Lead Action News, for volume 19, number 4. And Richard Turnbull wrote this case study where he did everything by the book. He identified that he was being exposed to lead currently. He had a blood lead level of 12.5, and he has gradually, by eradicating the current lead exposures, 2 of them, and then taking lots of detox foods and saunas and doing exercise, and he has brought his blood lead level down. It's now below just around 3. So it's a fantastic case study, and I recommend everybody have a look at it, especially if you are an adult and you're thinking, yes, on reflection, I've been exposed to lead. I was breathing the air in a city or in a busy traffic area when I was a child. My parents renovated on top of me. I drank rainwater, whatever it is, or we had fresh taps, whatever it is. Or I was a ceramicist. I used to do lead hobbies. I used to eat the sinkers while I was fishing. I swallowed a sinker. Whatever it is, think about it and get your blood lead level tested, and then start on the road to ensuring that your future, your aging, is not as bad as it would be predicted to be if you did nothing. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. I just want to come back to the testing part of it, because I think I get a lot of questions from people going, but can't I do a hair mineral analysis, and what about this and what about that? No, we just want the blood lead level, and that has to be done through a doctor. Is there any, I guess, specific reason or motivation we can give people to actually fight hard for this? Because I know when I asked my doctor, I had to fight. And my doctors used my very strange requests. And I'm like, it should be tested all the time, I'm telling the doctor. Every time you check my blood pressure, every time you check my iron levels, you should be testing my lead levels, and you're not. And I want it tested. No, it's fine, said the doctor. And I'm like, okay, I had an occupational exposure. I want you to test it. Sure, no problem. Writes the script.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that sure.
Yes, it is ridiculously hard. And even when children have been present during dry sanding of old paint, I've heard mothers tell me their doctor refused to test them. And I just say, go to another doctor. That is ridiculous and not justified in any way. So, yeah, whatever it takes. It took me years to work out, after I became a lead poisoning advisor, to work out that I actually drank rainwater as a child. It never occurred to me and to even ask my parents. And, finally the penny dropped. And so, and we had the house renovated when I was about, I think 4, maybe 5, 4, something like that. So, and that's happened to so many people. And then, other people have grown up in Broken Hill or Mount Isa or Port Pirie and, and Rosebery in Tasmania. There's just so many ways to get leaded when you're a child that you have to ask about and tell the doctor. And that should be enough. But as you say, if that's not enough, then just tell them you've been taking some calcium supplement and you read online that calcium supplements were withdrawn from sale or recalled in the United States, and now you're worried, so you want to test. It doesn't matter what the excuse is. Just get the test done. Yeah.
Now, I know something else. Yeah. Another tip you have shared previously with me is that you can get a blood lead level series done, and so for me it's like, great if you can convince the doctor for that first bit, then say just put series on the end of that. So can you explain what that means for people?
Right. So what that means is that if you're planning, as I have been for years, to test your food intake and your exercise and whatever else you're trying to get, drinking lots of liquid is another way to get rid of some lead from the body. And especially if it's, healthy detox smoothies or detox juices like Anthony William has promoted. Whatever you're doing, you want to know for sure. This is citizen science at its best. You need to know what your starting blood lead level is. If your starting blood lead level is above 1 microgram per deciliter, that's the lead group's action level. That's what our professors on our technical advisory board tell everyone, that if you've got more than 1, then you will have impact on your health from that level. So the government action level is 5 micrograms per deciliter, so 5 times bigger. And that's not a health justification for that. That is a economic justification. They couldn't afford to deal with all the people who have a blood lead level more than 1 if they are offering help when there's a notifiable blood lead level. So that's an economic reason, not a health reason. So we go for that 1, and if you are above 1, you want to know what you are to begin with, and then you experiment, you do your research, you look at the lead group's websites, that's www.lead.org.au and leadsafeworld.com, and read up about everything that can detox lead, and then have a retest. So however long it takes, and of course in the first stage, if your blood lead is above 1, we do recommend testing things that might be causing that. In children, that is typically soil and dust. In adults, it could be that you've just been renovating, or it could be that you are taking some alternative medicine. Ayurvedic medicines, unfortunately, have been known to be lead contaminated. Chinese herbal medicines. There are cosmetics that people use. There was one case just last year of cosmetics sold in Australia that were leaded. Unbelievable, but true. And caused lead poisoning of 3 children. But so you really do want to test what is in your environment. Turmeric is supposed to be often leaded, according to US studies.
And the other one that are popular at the moment that are quite toxic in terms, or potentially toxic in terms of lead poisoning.
Yeah.
So the bone broth one was the other one I was hoping.
Right, yes, bone broth. Yeah, we've had people using a lead group kit to test both turmeric and bone broth. And some of the people who were making their own bone broth with their own water, that was filtered, they had so much lead in their bone broth, and this is organic chicken bones, they stopped making their own bone broth. And, you know, like, and of course, if you do that and you go and then buy bone broth, well, test that as well. Don't just assume that because it's sold or it's called organic or whatever, that it's going to have no lead in it. So we go with the idea that whereas the government says you can have, you know, 10 micrograms per litre of lead in water and other liquids, we go again with 1, you know, like make it safe, because 10 was set when the blood lead level was set at 10. So we go with a tenth of that. So, yeah, if it's got detectable levels of lead in what you're imbibing a lot, then stop taking it, you know, find something that is actually safe. And the way we recommend people do that with water, for instance, is you know, buy stainless steel taps, get them installed, test your water before it, because of course there may be a valve further back in the plumbing line that is still bedded brass. So, you know, do the changes, take the testing. If you've got a rainwater tank, you should always be testing the water before you drink it. And, you know, 650,000 people in Australia are dependent on rainwater, but probably a handful of those have had their tanks tested for water, for lead in the water. And so, you know, that needs to change. So there are many things to advocate for. And I know the WHO and UN are very focused on paint, because they were focused on petrol and they've got that down. Now they're focused on paint. But in Australia, we really need to be focused on soil, dust, water, and food. You know, foodstuffs and hobbies. You know, there are many hobbies and DIY renovation and so on. Yeah.
Now, I know, just going back to turmeric, just to touch on that one, because I know it's very popular at the moment. I know one of the tips you've told me previously is to get Australian turmeric, not imported. So that would be a safer way to go.
That's right. Yeah, like again, in the United States, they do so much more testing of everything for lead, and including all imported things and things made in America. But it's there that we know from there that imported turmeric into America was found to contain too much lead. The same actually goes for wine. Wine is another interesting one. There was a study done in the United States where they tested imported and American wines, and imported wines, again, were higher. And interestingly, white wine was higher than red wine. So, you know, if you are a big wine drinker and you've got an elevated blood lead level above 1 microgram per deciliter, I'd be testing the wine that you drink a lot.
And making sure the glassware is lead-free.
Yes, yeah, crystalware is a no-no. You know, just put it away, put it up on a shelf so you can look at it. It's very nice, but I wouldn't be drinking out of it. And especially don't leave something in. Don't leave alcoholic, acidic, or hot drinks in crystal. Don't ever heat a drink in crystal. We had a terrible case in New South Wales of a woman who heated breast milk in the microwave in a crystal baby feeding bottle. Bad idea. So yeah, never heat anything in crystal that could put lead into your drink.
Lots of amazing tips. Is there just a couple of other tips that you'd like to share in terms of action that an individual might take to prevent the lead poisoning, lead exposure?
Yes, well, look, the best action you can take any time of year, but especially in this week of lead poisoning prevention week of action, is to buy a lead group kit. The kits are fantastic. You can go into your environment. You can actually employ a building biologist like Lucinda Curran to collect the samples for you, and to if you're uncertain about what to collect. And otherwise you can read up, because we send lots of information about it. You can read up what sort of samples should I collect, and you can send spices, you can send bone broth, you can send the water you use to make your bone broth, you can, whatever it is, and the usual suspects, the soil, the dust wipe, the ceiling dust, the vacuum dust. You can also send paint samples before you even get a contractor in to renovate. You can, or you do it yourself. You know, there are so many things that can be tested, and then you know before anything potentially is causing lead poisoning. And if you get back high results, you can at that point go to the doctor and ask for blood lead levels, especially for children, and even you can ask the pet for blood lead levels. So that then together, the information that you get in the kit results from the lead group, plus advice that we can give specific to your blood lead levels in your family and pets, is like gold. Then you can start to bring down blood lead levels. And, you know, even if you didn't have elevated blood lead levels, you can prevent the rise in blood lead levels for future residents of your home just by making sure that you clean up any lead contaminated soil, or you cover it, or you get rid of carpets that are impossible to get lead out of, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's many actions that an individual can take to make sure their home is lead safe, their childcare centre is lead safe, their workplace is lead safe if they're working in any way with lead, and you know, and even their shooting range. You know, you can use a lead group kit at a shooting range if you go to one. So yeah, they're a fantastic tool and the way forward. And we also, at the shop at leadsafeworld.com, we sell posters. So you can get posters, you can buy a poster, you can sort of more or less choose the image that you want to put on it and the lead safety message, and then put it up at a childcare centre, encouraging other people to do blood lead testing, home testing, childcare centre testing, and so on. So there are many, many ways that you can take action to raise awareness about lead poisoning prevention.
That's fantastic. And I have used the kits for quite a while. I really love that it's going to a laboratory that's NATA accredited, that has a proper testing protocol, and you know, it's all done to standard, as opposed to the I'm going to call it the dipsticks, but they're not the dipsticks. It's like the spot testing that you can buy at the hardware store. Why would, I mean, I understand, but just for everybody else, but why would somebody choose the lead safe kit as opposed to the hardware store spot test? Yeah,
now the hardware store is, you know, it's okay in most circumstances, but unfortunately you can't tell if you're in that, say, 5% of people who get either a false positive or a false negative result. Now that's a tragedy if it happens to you, if you get a false negative result, and you go ahead and sand your paint thinking that there's no lead in it. You know, that has cost people tens of thousands of dollars to clean up. So it's a very faulty system. The other problem with the colour change kits is they only change colour even when they're working at 0.5% lead. And what the lead group recommends is that you use a different technique, a lead safe technique, to manage paint if it's more than 0.1% lead. So, and even some people even will take action to make it lead safe if it's 0.01% lead. So that's getting closer to that 90 parts per million, which is 0.09% lead. So yeah, it's a big
difference with that number, isn't it?
Yeah, like it is a big difference
as opposed to 0.01.
Yes, that's right. It's a huge difference, and you know. And sometimes you get a result. We've seen results of 50% lead. So sure, in that case, the colour change kit, it will have helped, but it doesn't tell you that you're working with 50 times more than what our occupational regulations say is safe for a worker to work with, right? So again, even if it's at the bottom of the range that your result is at, or the top of the range that your result is at, you are better off having the actual number from the lab to get an idea of how to deal with your issue. Yeah.
I think the other thing that's nice about the using the lead safe kits is that, yes, they go and get tested by the lab and we get the results from the lab, but then you write up this amazing bunch of information that's specific to that actual test to help the person take action. So it's not just you get a number and you go, what am I going to do? You tell us exactly what to do, and that's so important.
That's right, and that's the advantage of a lead group kit over just taking some soil or dust or paint samples to your local lab. I mean, people do that, but the lab gives them these numbers on a page, no advice. So it's just so much easier and cheaper than even just going to your lab. Because, you know, it's the lead group that's the client of the lab, so we don't have to pay that initial client fee to become a client. You're getting a discount from our lab. They give a charity discount to us for the analysis cost. So we can put together these kits, and with all their fabulous advice that comes with them, for a cheaper price than you would just pay directly to a lab to get a bunch of numbers.
Yeah, but even without just talking the money side of things, that information that you provide is so valuable for people.
Yes.
You know, you get a number and then you know what to do, and then you've got someone to ask if you're stuck, and, you know, it's just an incredible service that you do. So thank you. Thank you.
There are some thank you. There are some amazing figures on the cost-benefit analysis for taking action on lead. The World Health Organization says that for every dollar spent, you can save $217 in future earnings for a child, for instance, and in health education and medical costs being reduced. So, I mean, I meant education costs and medical costs. For every dollar spent to prevent lead poisoning, you will get back up to $217 worth of value for that person's life.
It's such a phenomenal investment, isn't it? You know, when you actually just
it is.
You know, most people go, I got my money back, or 50% more. Like $217 for every dollar is huge. So it's so worth it.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Elizabeth, how do people get more information and find out more about lead and the test kits and whatnot?
Yes, well, the lead group's websites and our lead action news and our fact sheets, we've got 100 fact sheets on our websites, and I find that lately the Google searches that I do, I don't know what it is, but we used to be in the we might be 7 out of the top 10 results in Google in years gone by. Nowadays, you get all this government website stuff, and so you have to go further into, luckily the federal government, the Environment Department has listed the lead group's kits as the recommended way to test for lead. So you can go through the Lead Alert 6-step guide and get to the lead group's website, but you know, it would be so much better if Google would just make sure that people are directed to the place where they can get most advice about lead, because, you know, one document on a government website is nowhere near as good as 5,000 documents on the lead group's website.
Yeah. So what's the URL? So if people want to go directly to the website?
So the newest website with all positive messages and fact sheets and newsletters is leadsafeworld.com, and that's where our shop is, and that's where people can also become partners. So we've had several building biologists, about 7 I think now, become partners of the lead group, and that means that, you know, people can also contact those people to come and collect samples if they like you, and then we've got other sorts of partners, and we've got solutions. So we're trying to make it very easy for people to just go through the website and look for solutions. But when you're looking at more complicated issues, if you just do a search on whatever you're most interested in about lead, you will find everything on lead.org.au, our original website. It has every one of our newsletters on it, and every one of our fact sheets, and you know, links to any government information that's useful, and even when the government has taken down their useful information, we've put it up on our website. So yeah, it's the motherlode of useful lead information on that site.
It's like a big library, isn't it, that website? There's so much there.
Yes. Yeah. So I always do a site search, like where you're actually looking for specific information and you just go through Google search site. So that's what I do, but I don't know what other people do. But anyway, the other website that we have, Volcano ArtPrize, you'll see very simple messages on there. That's our go-to site for use of graphics. So we invite people to submit graphics. So if you've had an experience about lead, you've done some lead testing, or you have found something out, we can put together lots of beautiful graphics for all of our fact sheets and newsletter articles by people submitting Volcano ArtPrize entries. So it's open now for 2020, and we're just processing the 31 prizes and $600 in prize money to go out to the winners for this 2019 Volcano ArtPrize year. But so
children can enter as well. So just to
absolutely, yes. Children enter for free, and adults only have to pay $10. And the prizes are really good, and we just we love seeing the work that comes in. Children typically do drawings and paintings, and adults typically do films and photos. But we love it when there's a mixing up there, and we've got so many. We've got hundreds of fabulous lead safety messages, because that's part of the Volcano ArtPrize too. Yeah, so
incredible.
It's a great way to,
It's lovely.
A picture tells 1,000 words.
Definitely. So Elizabeth, that's fantastic, all the information that you've just sharing, helping us understand lead poisoning, lead prevention, and about Lead Poisoning Prevention Week of Action, which is something we instigated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Lucinda.
That's
Bye.
fine. Bye-bye.